My name is Ana Silva. I was born in a small village in the interior of Brazil, but I knew early on that my dreams were too big for those narrow and dusty streets where I grew up. I saw my parents struggle every day to support me and my younger brother, but despite the hard work, we never had enough. The hunger we felt was not only for food, it was the hunger for something greater, something beyond the life we led. I always knew I was born for something more, but I had no idea how to get out of there. Then, one day, my uncle, who had lived in the United States for years, returned to visit us. He told stories of a land of opportunity, a place where dreams come true if you put in the hard enough. He promised to help me cross the border into the US, a promise that would change my life forever. The decision to leave Brazil was not easy. I had to abandon everything I knew, my family, my friends, the warm scent of the woods near home, the comfort of the familiar sounds of the village at night. But deep down, I knew that if I stayed, I would never make my dreams come true. My journey began with uncertainty, but also with hope. I remember the first time I saw the Mexican border. The air was heavy with heat and tension. The road stretched endlessly in front of me, with the distant hum of cars passing by, leading people to their destinations. I was terrified, but I couldn't go back. As we crossed the desert that night, I felt the weight of fear overwhelming me. The warm sand beneath my feet seemed to burn my shoes, and the cold wind that blew after sunset only made it worse. Each step seemed to be the last, but I kept going, driven by the belief that, on the other side of that crossing, my future awaited me. The night was overwhelming, as if the darkness itself tried to swallow us whole. We moved in silence, except for the sound of our breath and the occasional rustle of the dry desert plants grazing our legs. My heart was pounding in my chest, my body exhausted, but I couldn't stop. There was no turning back. The border was so close, but the road was still long. Fear overwhelmed me, but I also realized that I was not alone. There were other people around me, people from all backgrounds, each carrying their own story of struggle, their own desire for a better future. We were all on that journey together, sharing the same pain, the same hope. There was strength in this unity, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, we can find strength in one another. The desert seemed to extend forever, and with every step, I felt the weight of my decision. The fear of being caught by immigration agents was a constant shadow, following us closely at every turn. We kept our heads down, avoiding any sound that might give us away. The air was heavy, and each gust of wind seemed like the last warning before disaster struck. I remember the feeling of my belly twitching as we approached the fence at the border. We had been walking for hours, and the fatigue was unbearable. My body felt like it was about to give up, but the thought of what awaited me on the other side pushed me forward. The promise of a new life, of opportunities, was stronger than the pain. At that moment, I realized that it wasn't just the physical obstacles I had to overcome. The mental and emotional weight of the journey was even greater. The fear of the unknown, the fear of what might happen if I was captured, was something I carried with me at every step. But there was also something else, a quiet, unwavering hope that kept me going, even when everything seemed impossible. Finally, we reached the fence, and as I touched it, I felt an explosion of emotions, relief, fear, and a deep determination mixed together. The barrier that separated me from the life I had dreamed of seemed at once impenetrable and a symbol of all that I had already overcome to get there. But we were still not sure. The hardest part was still ahead. As we crossed the cracks in the fence, the sounds of the night seemed to increase. I could hear the distant hum of cars on the other side, but it sounded like a distant dream. My legs ached, my feet bled from the long walk, but I couldn't stop now. Every inch of my body screamed for rest, but I moved forward, fueled by the idea of freedom that was drawn beyond the horizon. I remember crossing the line, stepping on American soil for the first time. It was as if the world changed beneath my feet. I had done it. But there was no time to celebrate. Fear still hung in the air, lingering, as we continued to advance into the unknown, into a world at once frightening and full of promise. In that moment, I understood something that would stay with me forever. Resilience isn't just strength. It is keeping hope alive when everything around you falls apart. It's finding the will to keep going even when your body, mind, and heart beg you to stop. I had come this far, and this time, nothing was going to stop me. The days after crossing the border were a blur. We kept moving, trying to stay as invisible as possible, and each night felt like a new challenge. I remember the first night I spent in a small, cramped apartment with a group of strangers who, like me, had crossed the border in search of a better life. The room was stuffy, and the air smelled of sweat and exhaustion. Still, in the midst of all that discomfort, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: relief. For the first time in weeks, I was able to breathe a little easier. But the relief was short-lived. The reality of living as an undocumented immigrant began to weigh heavily on him. Fear never really left me. I needed to hide, always in the shadows, always aware of the risk of being caught and deported. The pressure to remain invisible, to avoid the authorities, accompanied me every day. Every step away from home felt like a gamble, a risk that could cost me everything. I got a job in a small factory, doing a type of work that, over time, destroys the body. My hands ached after long shifts, and my body was always tired. But I kept going, because I knew I couldn't stop. I couldn't afford to get too comfortable, nor let the fear of being discovered paralyze me. I needed to keep going, one step at a time. It wasn't easy. There were days when I questioned my decision, days when I thought about giving up. The loneliness of being in a foreign land, with no family nearby, was suffocating. There were moments when I thought about the life I left behind in Brazil, the people I loved, the home I knew. But then I remembered that this was the price of freedom, the cost of seeking a better future. And that thought kept me going, even when the nights seemed endless. I remember one night in particular when I was sitting alone in my small apartment, looking at the city lights flashing outside the window. I thought about my parents, how they worked so hard to give me a chance. I thought about the dreams they had for me, and how I had crossed an entire country to try to make those dreams come true. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would never give up. No matter how hard it was, how alone or scared I felt, I would keep moving forward. He had gone too far to turn back. The first time I spoke to my family after crossing the border, I couldn't hold back the tears. Hearing their voices again, knowing that they were okay, was both comforting and painful. They didn't fully understand everything I was going through, but they were proud of me, and that gave me the strength to keep going. Their pride in me, their faith in me, became my fuel. I couldn't disappoint them, and he wouldn't. Each day was a battle, but each day also brought me closer to the life I dreamed of. It was no longer just a matter of surviving. It was about living, about carving out my space in a world that once seemed so distant and impossible. I knew that there would still be many obstacles ahead, but I also knew that I was no longer the same person who crossed that border months ago. I had been forged in the fire of adversity, and now, nothing could stop me. Months passed, and each day brought a new set of challenges, but with each challenge, I became stronger. There were times when I felt like I was losing myself in that constant rush, in the struggle to remain invisible and keep my head down. I was living in a world where I didn't really belong, where every interaction felt like a risk. But I clung to hope, knowing that the sacrifices I had made would someday lead me to something better. It was during this period that I met a woman named Lucia. She had also come to the United States in search of a better life, and like me, carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. We became fast friends. Lucia's sweetness and kindness reminded me of the people of my homeland in Brazil, the ones who always welcome you with open arms, no matter what. She became my family in a place where I had no one else. Lucia and I used to sit together after long days of work, sharing stories about our lives, about the pains we left behind and the hope we carried forward. Her stories were full of difficulties, just like mine, but there was always a message of resistance, of strength, behind each story. It was through these conversations that I learned the true meaning of community. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And sometimes, that was enough to keep going. One day, as we sat in a small cafe after work, Lucia looked at me and said something that has been etched in my memory forever. "You know, Ana, sometimes you think that the hardest part of this journey is crossing the border. But the real challenge comes later. It's learning to live with fear, to carry it every day without letting it destroy you." Her words hit me like a strong blow. I had spent so much time focused on the physical obstacles, the crossing, the survival, that I had never really faced the emotional impact it had all taken on me. That night, I went home and thought about Lucia's words. I realized that the hardest part of my journey hadn't been the wilderness, the border patrol, or the constant fear of being caught. The hardest thing was living with the consequences of the choices I made, living with the constant reminder that I was a foreigner, living in a place where I didn't really belong. It was loneliness, isolation, the constant need to hide. But in that realization, I also found something else, a deeper level of strength, a kind of resistance that went beyond simple survival. The days that followed were difficult. I faced discrimination at work and felt that I was being judged all the time for the color of my skin, for my accent, for the simple fact of being an immigrant. There were times when I just wanted to scream, times when I thought about giving up. But then I remembered why I was there. I was there for a better life, for the chance to build something for myself, for the hope of giving my family a future they never thought possible. One night, as I was walking home from work, something changed inside me. The weight of the world no longer seemed so unbearable. I had come this far, and I knew I wasn't going to let anything stop me now. I realized that resilience is not just about weathering the storm. It is to find the strength to continue, even when the storm does not pass. The storm doesn't have to destroy you. You can survive it, and you can thrive in spite of it. The weeks turned into months, and little by little, the fear that had previously consumed me began to diminish. It was a strange feeling, like learning to breathe again after holding your breath for too long. I still couldn't walk freely. I still had to watch every step. But I started to feel more comfortable in my own skin. I began to build a life in the shadows, creating a small space where I could be myself, where I could dream again. I got a new job in a restaurant, a job behind the scenes, away from the public eye. It wasn't much, but it was a step forward. My hands got used to the service, and I began to take pride in the little things, in the way I prepared a meal, in the pace of the kitchen, in the way the food I made brought people together. It wasn't the life I had imagined when I crossed the border, but it was a life I could be proud of. During this period, I also began to rebuild my connection with my family. I sent money home whenever I could, and wrote letters telling how I was doing, sharing the ups and downs of my journey. They were my constant reminder of why I had come here. Each letter, each call, made me feel closer to them, and the faith they had in me became my lifeline. I knew that I was no longer living for myself. I was living for them, for the future I promised them. Then, one night, I got a call from my mother. Her voice, trembling with excitement, told me that they were planning to come visit me. Just thinking of them coming to see me in this strange new world, tears welled up in my eyes. I hadn't seen my family in years. The possibility of hugging them again, of seeing their faces in person, was a dream for which I had almost given up hope. In that instant, I made a promise to myself. I would do whatever it took to make that moment a reality. I would fight for it. That moment changed everything for me. It reminded me that no matter how far I had come or how much I had endured, the love of my family would always have the power to bring me back to life. This became the fuel for the next chapter of my journey. I knew that no matter what obstacles I faced, I would never lose sight of the reason that brought me here: to give my family the future they deserved. The following months passed like a blur of expectation. I worked harder than ever, saving every penny I could to make sure that when my family arrived, everything was perfect. The thought of seeing them walk through the door, of hugging them after so long, kept me steadfast. Each day felt like a countdown to the moment I dreamed of for so long. But despite the excitement, the fear never left me completely. There were still times when I heard sirens in the distance or saw a policeman passing by on the street, and my heart raced. I had learned to live with this constant tension, to carry the weight of fear without letting it crush me. But he was always there, lurking, reminding me that I lived with time counted. Still, I kept going, because I knew that this was my life now, and I had no choice but to live it. The day my family arrived seemed surreal. I was at the airport, my heart racing, waiting for them to walk through the gates. The moment I saw my mother, father, and brother walking toward me, I felt an overwhelming surge of emotion. The years of separation disappeared in an instant. I ran over to them, and when I finally hugged my mother, it seemed like all the pain and fear I had endured finally made sense. That was what I had fought so hard for. That was the reason why I crossed the desert, faced the cold nights, and faced so many challenges. My mom held me tightly, her tears wetting my shoulder as she whispered, "I knew you could do it, Anna. I knew you'd find a way." Hearing those words, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. My fears didn't go away, but for the first time, I felt like I had a greater purpose than just surviving. I was building something for them, for us, and that gave me the strength to face whatever came my way. As we walked through the city, my family was enchanted by the world I had created here, a world built only on hope and determination. They were proud of me, and for the first time, I could see that they really understood everything I had been through. I was no longer just a daughter. I was a woman who fought for her dreams, who conquered her space in a foreign land. But even as I rejoiced in their presence, I knew that the struggle was not over yet. I still needed to keep my head down. The danger of being discovered, of being deported, was always lurking. Each day was a delicate balance, a tightrope walk between freedom and fear. But now I had my family with me, and I couldn't give it up. I had come there for them, and I was not going to stop. Over time, things began to stabilize. I got a more secure job, and my family began to adjust to life here. We lived in a small apartment, but it was ours. The fear still existed, but it was no longer as suffocating as before. I had learned to deal with him, to live with him, and to move forward in spite of him. I began to feel that I could breathe again. The nights were no longer so long, and the days were no longer so heavy. But I never forgot where I came from. I have never forgotten the desert, the cold, the loneliness. These memories have shaped me, reminded me of my strength, and taught me the value of resilience. I knew I had come a long way, but the journey was not yet over. And it may never end. There would always be challenges. There would always be obstacles to overcome. But now, I had the tools to face them. My story, our story, is a story of survival, strength, and love. It's a reminder that no matter how difficult the journey, no matter how dark the night, there's always hope. And with hope comes the strength to overcome anything. I'm here today because I didn't give up, because I held on tight to my dreams, and because I believed that a better life awaited me. And as I look back on everything I've been through, I know that this journey has never been just about surviving. It was about thriving. It was about proving to myself, to my family, and to the world that resilience isn't just a pretty word. It's a way of living. It's been years since the day I crossed the border, and looking back, it all still feels like a dream. A hard, exhausting, painful dream. But still a dream. Life here, in this foreign land, is far from perfect. The challenges continue to exist. Moments when I feel the weight of the decisions I've made. When fear returns like a silent shadow, accompanying me at every turn. But there is something that cannot be denied now. I am here. I did it. In a way, I built a new life, brick by brick, with my bare hands. I learned to decipher the complexities of this country, to find ways to make a living, to protect my family. I remember the first time I received a payment here. It was more than just money. It was a confirmation that I had achieved something real, with effort, sweat, and a willpower that kept me on my feet when everything seemed to fall apart. For the first time, I wasn't just a survivor trying to go unnoticed. I was part of something. I had a purpose. But even though I have become stronger, I have never forgotten the price I paid for this journey. It wasn't just the physical wear and tear or the concrete sacrifices that marked me. It was the emotional weight of having left everything behind: my land, my language, my identity, the people I loved. Every day I carry this choice with me, as a reminder of who I was and who I needed to become to get here. And in a way, that's what shapes who I am today. That's why I don't take anything for granted. So I wake up every morning with the awareness that I've struggled too hard to let it all slip through my fingers. There are days when I look at my children, growing up in this new world that still seems so strange to me, and I see in them the future I promised to build. A future where they can follow their own dreams, free from the same fears and obstacles I faced. I think about everything I want to give them, things I never had, things I didn't even dare to imagine in my childhood. And I make a point of teaching the value of effort, persistence, the ability to continue even when everything seems impossible. I want them to grow up knowing that, regardless of what life throws at them, they can win. But I also know that this journey was never just mine. My family, Lucia, and all the people who walked by my side on this journey helped me to be who I am today. They are the ones who reminded me, every day, that no one is really alone in their struggles. We may walk different paths, but we are all driven by this same human desire to seek something better. That connection, that silent bond of shared humanity, was what sustained me through the most difficult days. Now, as I look back, I see how much I've changed. That young woman who crossed the border driven by fear and despair no longer exists. In her place, there is today an unshakable, firm woman, determined to give her children the life she once only dared to dream of. I faced countless obstacles, but with each one, I became stronger. In each challenge, I discovered a new facet of myself, and that, above all, is the greatest gift of all: to know that I am capable of so much more than I ever imagined. I am not saying that it is easy. It's still difficult. Fear still appears from time to time, surreptitiously. I still live with the reality of being an immigrant in a land that, no matter how much I inhabit, will never be completely mine. But the difference now is that I no longer see these challenges as insurmountable walls. I see them as opportunities. Opportunities to prove that resilience isn't just about surviving. It is to flourish. It is to stand up in the face of adversity and declare, firmly, I will not be broken. There are moments when I close my eyes and remember the sounds of Brazil, the rustling of the trees, the murmur of the river, the laughter of my neighbors. I can almost smell the wet earth after the rain, the aroma of fresh coffee being passed in the morning. It is in these moments of silence that I realize how much of who I am has been shaped by the place I left behind. My roots are there, in that village, in the people I grew up with. And while I've built a new life here, that part of me will never go away. But even as I clung to those memories, I learned to find a new sense of home here, in this strange land. Home is not just a place. It's a feeling, a sense of belonging, and it's something I'm still learning to build. Every smile from a stranger, every conversation with my children about their dreams, every step I take towards the future brings me closer to this new home. It may not look the same, it may never have the same feeling as where I came from, but it's mine. I conquered that. I also learned that overcoming is not just about resisting difficulties. It's finding joy in the little things. It's celebrating the small victories. Like when my son finally learned to speak English, or when my daughter came home with a perfect report card. These moments, these small achievements, remind me that even in the midst of struggle, there is beauty, there is progress. When I look at my children now, I see not only the life I have given them, but the life they are building for themselves. They're learning to dream, to reach for the stars in a way I never could. I want them to see me as someone who didn't just survive the storm. I flourished within it. I want you to know that no matter where they are, no matter what obstacles they face, they have within them the strength to overcome everything. This is a lesson I carry with me every day. Resilience is not about pretending that things are easy. It is to be honest with yourself, to recognize the struggle and, even so, to decide to continue. It is facing fear and uncertainty and choosing to go beyond that. I have done this, time after time, and I will continue to do so, as long as I live. The path was not easy. There were moments of doubt, exhaustion, fear of not being able to do it. But each of these moments made me stronger, showed me what I'm really capable of. I learned that resilience is not a destiny, it is a journey. It is not about achieving a perfect and unattainable goal. It's about growing, evolving, and never giving up, no matter how hard it is. As I sit here today, looking back on all that I have accomplished, I feel a peace that I never imagined possible when I crossed that border. I survived the darkness, the loneliness, and the fear. And now, I can look forward with hope. Hope for a future where my children will never have to face the struggles I faced. Hope for a future where I can live freely, without fear. Hope for a future where the past will no longer define me, but will serve as a reminder of how far I have come. As I look to the future, I don't just see possibilities. I see an infinite horizon of opportunities to grow. The scars of my past and the challenges I have overcome have shaped me into someone who recognizes my own worth. I no longer question whether I am strong enough. I faced situations that no one should go through, and I came out on the other side with even more determination to win. But resilience isn't just about fighting for yourself. It's about reaching out to others along the way. That was one of the biggest lessons I learned over time. I discovered a deep joy, not only in my achievements, but also in helping others who have walked similar paths. I've been volunteering with community organizations, sharing my story with those who need to listen, and doing my best to ensure that the next generation has a less arduous journey than mine. There is something deeply rewarding about being able to help those who are going through what I went through. I know what it's like to be afraid, to be lost in an unknown place, with no one to turn to. So, when I see someone in this situation, I make a point of reaching out. I share what I have learned. I offer advice. But most of all, I remind this person that they are also capable. I am living proof of that. I remember one particular night when I was leaving a community meeting, right after sharing my testimony. A young woman approached. She told me that hearing my story had given her the strength to continue. She had crossed the border a few weeks ago and was struggling to find herself, trying to make sense of the chaos of emotions and obstacles she faced. I saw the fear in her eyes, It was the same one I once saw reflected in my own. I took his hand, looked into his eyes, and said, "You're not alone. Go on. There is a future waiting for you." And every word I said, I spoke from the heart. In that instant, I realized that resilience is not a lonely journey. It is built together, one person at a time. When we share our stories, when we reach out to others, we don't just heal, we help heal others. That's the true power of resilience, inspiring others to stand up, just as we once did. As I reflect on everything I have experienced, I am overcome with gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons I learned, for the strength I discovered in myself, and for the people who have been by my side along the way. I'm grateful for the life I have now, but more than that, I'm grateful for the woman I've become. I am no longer that girl on the edge of the border, gripped by fear and uncertainty. I am a woman who faced the storm head-on and came out the other side stronger, braver, and more determined than ever. My story is just one among many. There are thousands, millions of people out there fighting, resisting, and overcoming obstacles every day. But if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that resilience isn't just about surviving. It's about flourishing. It is to stand up in the face of adversity and declare firmly, "I will not be broken. I'm going to get up, and I will continue to fight for the life I deserve." Today, I look back on my life and see not just a survivor, but a woman who has learned to embrace every part of her journey. The struggles, the pains, and the sacrifices have shaped me and made me someone deeply connected with the essence of who I am. Now I understand that resilience is not just about going through the worst moments. It is knowing how to value the strength that each challenge reveals within you. It's making sure you can tackle anything that comes your way, because you've overcome a lot so far. When I reflect on my trajectory, I realize how much I have grown. The woman I am today is someone who has found peace with the past and purpose in the present. I learned to live without letting fear control me. I learned to trust myself again. I learned that I am enough, that I don't need anyone's approval or validation to move forward. The only approval that matters is mine. There are still days when the burden of being an immigrant in a foreign land seems too much. Moments when I think about the life I left behind, the friends and family I had to say goodbye to. But these days are increasingly rare. Now, when I look at my children, I don't just see the future, I see hope. I see the embodiment of everything I fought for, everything I endured. They are my reason for everything. And in the moments when doubt tries to appear, I remind myself of everything I've already achieved. I remember that I crossed deserts, faced the fear of the unknown, and built a life from scratch. If I manage to do all this, I can face whatever comes my way. There's nothing that can break me. No obstacle is too great. No fear is insurmountable. Each step of this journey has taught me something valuable. I learned the importance of resilience, not as a beautiful word, but as a way of living. It's about adapting when things don't go as planned, about standing firm even when the world seems to come crashing down around you. It's about holding on tight to your dreams, even when the path ahead seems uncertain. It's knowing that you're capable of so much more than you ever imagined. My story may have started with fear and uncertainty, but it ends with victory. It ends with the awareness that I have the power to shape my own destiny. I'm not defined by my past or the challenges I've faced. I am defined by the way I stood up before each of them, by the way I learned to embrace resilience and carry it with me every day. Now, as I look to the future, I feel an excitement for all that is yet to come. I don't know exactly where the road will take me, but I know I'm ready. I've faced the hardest parts of this journey, and nothing can stop me now. The best is yet to come, and I'm prepared for it.